Chapter 1. The False Promise of Endless Healing. In the quiet hours of the morning, before the noise of the world takes hold, there's a subtle ache that lives in many hearts. It's not always loud. Sometimes it shows up as a low hum, a restlessness, a sense that something is missing. Something still needs to be fixed. Something still isn't right. This feeling is the silent engine behind countless searches. Behind every book on self-improvement, behind every ritual, every journal entry, every affirmation repeated until the voice cracks. It is the belief, often unspoken, that I am not there yet. You may recognize it. The idea that healing is a destination, always just out of reach. That you must fix your past, cleanse your energy, align your chakras, rewrite your story, and dig deeper into the layers of your psyche. Only then will you finally arrive at the peace you've been chasing for so long. But what if this is the trap? What if the constant search for healing is, in itself, the wound? The self-help world has taught us that we are projects, that we are always under construction, always needing one more breakthrough, one more shadow to integrate, one more trauma to unearth. But in this never-ending race for completeness, we forget the stillness already available beneath the striving. This is not to say that healing isn't real. Healing is beautiful. It has its place. But healing becomes harmful when it turns into a lifestyle of self-rejection. When the pursuit of growth becomes just another way to say, I'm not enough yet. Pause for a moment and ask yourself gently, what if there's nothing wrong with me? What if this moment, right now, is already whole? So many of us are addicted to the idea that we're broken, that there's something inherently wrong with us. But that belief is like a house built on sand. It will never hold you. The more you try to fix what's not actually broken, the more fragmented you feel. True freedom comes not from relentless self-analysis, but from radical self-acceptance. Not from peeling back every layer of your mind, but from realizing that your being is not a problem to solve. You are not born to be a constant project. You were born to be, and maybe, just maybe, that's enough. Let's go deeper. Let's question the cycle of endless self-improvement. Let's see it for what it really is. Another form of striving, another form of control, another way to say, I will love myself when... But the soul doesn't work that way. The soul waits, quietly, patiently, not for your transformation, but for your surrender. And in that surrender, a powerful truth begins to emerge. Healing isn't the goal. Presence is. You don't need to fix yourself to be at peace. You need to stop abandoning the moment in hopes of a better one. We've been conditioned to believe that arrival lies somewhere in the future. But arrival only exists now, and now, and now. Every time you return to your breath, you are whole again. Every time you sit in stillness, without trying to change anything, the illusion of brokenness begins to dissolve. Because what you truly are has never needed fixing. And this is where the real healing begins. Not by doing more, but by releasing the belief that you are a problem. Chapter 2, the addiction to self-fixing. We ended the last chapter with a quiet truth, that healing begins not with doing more, but with letting go of the idea that you need to be repaired. And yet, even when we understand this on a mental level, something in us continues to chase. The chase is subtle, sometimes even elegant. It dresses itself in a language of growth, transformation, and spiritual progress. It says, I'm just working on myself. I'm trying to become my best version. I'm doing the inner work. But under these noble phrases, there's often something heavier, self-rejection masquerading as self-help. You see, the desire to improve can become an addiction just like any other. It offers temporary relief, a fleeting high when we discover a new concept, a new method, a new tool that promises, finally, to unlock our potential. But soon enough, the old discomfort returns. The mind whispers, "You still have work to do." So we search again. Another journal, another course, another healing retreat, another teacher who surely holds the answer we've missed. This is the cycle, the spiritual hamster wheel. The belief that if we can just fix this one last thing, everything else will fall into place. But just like chasing the horizon, it never gets closer. Because the very act of chasing implies that what we seek is not already here. Self-fixing is seductive because it gives us the illusion of control. If I can fix myself, I can control how I'm perceived. I can avoid pain. I can finally feel worthy of love. I can be safe. But control is not the path to peace. Surrender is. We rarely talk about the exhaustion that comes from constantly working on ourselves. The fatigue of being your own full-time project. The burnout of spiritual over-efforting. And yet, many carry this quietly, feeling like failures for not being healed enough. Measuring their worth by how many layers they've peeled away, how many wounds they've uncovered, how many traumas they've processed. But what if the real medicine isn't more work? What if the healing you need doesn't require digging, but resting? What if your next breakthrough is not in another breakthrough, but in the pause between? This isn't a call to give up on your growth. It's a call to unhook from the compulsive fixing. It's an invitation to ask, what am I avoiding by constantly improving? Often, we're avoiding the stillness, the quiet space where nothing needs to be done. Because in that space, there are no distractions. And we have to face ourselves, not as broken, not as in progress, but as we are. For many, that's terrifying. We've tied our worth to movement. We believe that if we stop improving, we'll become stuck, stagnant, lost. But growth doesn't always look like forward motion. Sometimes it looks like rooting in. Sometimes it looks like finally sitting down after years of running. Letting go is not regression. It's returning. Returning to the part of you that never left. The part that doesn't need fixing. The quiet presence that has watched you try so hard for so long. And it's tired. It's ready for you to come home. To stop being at war with yourself. To stop measuring your value by how many spiritual books you've read or how perfectly you meditate. To stop believing that peace is earned through pain. Peace is remembered. It's what remains when you stop resisting the present moment. When you stop running from the discomfort. When you stop trying to fix your way into worthiness. So what happens if you stop? What happens if, for today, you drop the tools? If you let the healing be complete? Even if just for this breath? What arises in the silence that follows? Perhaps it is peace. Perhaps it is enough. Chapter 3. The pain you're trying to avoid. We rarely chase healing for healing's sake. Behind the rituals, behind the affirmations and journals and daily practices, there is usually something deeper at play. A quiet discomfort, a buried fear, a wound we've never wanted to name. It's not always dramatic. Sometimes it's subtle, like a shadow that lingers at the edge of your awareness. A heaviness that comes and goes. A voice inside that whispers, if I stop working on myself, everything might fall apart. So we keep going. Not always because we want to grow, but because we're afraid of what will surface if we stop. This is the hidden pain, not the obvious heartbreaks or childhood memories we've already processed, but the deeper pain of simply not feeling safe to be as we are. The pain of believing, deep down, that our unfiltered, unhealed self isn't lovable, isn't worthy, isn't enough. And that belief, that we are only acceptable once we've become something better, fuels the cycle. We become afraid of our own stillness, because stillness has no distractions. It holds up a mirror, and in that mirror, we see everything we've been trying to run from. We don't fear the silence because it's empty. We fear it because it's honest. And yet, this pain we're avoiding, it's not infinite. It's not a black hole waiting to consume you. It's more like a neglected child tugging at your sleeve, asking to be seen. It's not here to punish you. It's here to be integrated, to be held, but cannot be healed through avoidance. You cannot outrun a shadow by sprinting toward the light. You must turn and face it. And here is the great paradox. When you finally allow the pain to speak, it no longer controls you. When you sit with the fear without trying to fix it, it begins to soften. When you allow yourself to feel the sadness without rushing to reframe it, it begins to move. Emotions are not obstacles. They're messengers. And every time you bury them beneath another goal, another practice, another attempt to be better, the message gets louder, more chaotic, more demanding. You may think the pain is the enemy, but the pain is the invitation. It's saying, please stop fixing me. Please just sit with me. Please see me so I can rest. When we stop resisting our pain, something incredible happens. It begins to dissolve into awareness. Not because we've solved it, but because we've stopped feeding it with fear. Awareness is the great solvent, and presence is the greatest healer of all. So the next time discomfort arises, not just the big waves, but the small ripples too, see if you can stay. Not to analyze, not to fix, but just to be with what is. To hold it gently, like you would hold a child waking from a nightmare. This is not weakness. This is mastery. Real power doesn't come from control. It comes from the willingness to feel, to remain open in the presence of discomfort, to stop trying to escape your humanity and instead embrace it. Let that be the work, not the search for perfection, but the courage to stay present with what's real. And what's real right now is enough. Chapter 4. You are already whole, the forgotten wisdom. If you were never told you were broken, would you still be trying to fix yourself? Pause with that. Strip away the teachings, the books, the beliefs passed down or picked up in spiritual spaces. Strip away the subtle messaging that says, you're close, but not quite there. And listen instead to what's already inside you. Beneath the noise, beneath the practices, beneath even the pain, there's a knowing, a truth so simple, it often goes unnoticed. You are already whole. You have always been whole. This isn't an affirmation meant to convince you. It's a remembering, a return to what you knew before you learned how to doubt, before you were conditioned to seek validation, transformation, purification. Wholeness is not a prize you earn after checking all the right boxes. It is your default setting, your native state, and it doesn't disappear just because you forgot it. The oak tree doesn't strive to become more tree. The moon does not seek approval for shining. The river does not question if its curves are worthy. And yet, here we are, endlessly questioning our value, our completeness, our right to rest. The world may have taught you to see yourself in fragments, to believe you are a puzzle with missing pieces. But you are not. You are a mosaic. Every crack, every scar, every strange angle contributes to your design. And that design was never meant to be perfect by human standards. It was meant to be true. The truth of your being does not lie in how much you accomplish or how enlightened you appear. It lies in how willing you are to meet yourself without agenda, to sit in your skin without judgment, to look into your own eyes and say, even now, I accept you. Even now, with the questions unanswered. Even now, with the wounds still healing. Even now, with nothing added or improved. Wholeness is not the absence of pain. It is the presence of self-compassion within it. It's the willingness to bring all of you to the table, not just the parts you've polished. When you forget your wholeness, you live in deficit. You approach the world asking, what can I do to feel complete? But when you remember, the question shifts. You begin asking, what am I here to give from this fullness? And that's when life starts responding differently. Because life doesn't reward striving. It reflects being. When you embody your wholeness without needing to prove it, the world feels it. People sense something steady, something unshakable. Not arrogance, not ego, just an inner peace that whispers, I am already enough. That energy is magnetic, and it has nothing to do with perfection. It comes from deep rest within the self, from the sacred act of no longer trying so hard, from the courage to show up without needing to edit who you are. Let that be the practice today, not to become more, but to soften into the truth of what you already are. Sit with yourself, not as a project, but as a companion, not to fix, but to witness, not to critique, but to cherish, because you do not need to earn your wholeness. You only need to remember it. Chapter 5, The Silence Between the Techniques. There is a moment between breaths, a space between thoughts, a stillness between all the techniques we use to reach peace. It's quiet there, so quiet that it's often missed. But in that silence, something profound begins to happen, if we're willing to notice it. We spend so much time doing, even in the name of healing. We meditate with timers. We journal to reach insights. We repeat affirmations, visualize outcomes, align chakras, script desires. And all of it, while well-intentioned, becomes just another form of effort. But effort is noise, and the soul doesn't speak through noise. The soul whispers, and it does so in the space between your efforts, in that sacred pause between technique and surrender. You may have felt it before without realizing it. A sudden wave of peace after giving up on a goal. A calm presence that appears just after you've said, I don't know what else to do. The comfort that shows up not at the peak of your practice, but in the moment after you stop trying. That's the silence between the techniques. And that silence holds more wisdom than 1,000 spiritual strategies. Because peace doesn't live in the method. It lives in what the method points to. It's like trying to find the moon by studying your finger. At some point, you have to stop pointing. You have to look up and see directly. Techniques are fingers. Silence is the moon. And the moon does not ask to be reached. It simply asks to be seen. But this goes against how we've been trained. We're taught that if we just try harder, focus more, do better, we'll get there. But what if there is found in the moment we stop reaching? What if the real shift happens not because of what you did, but because of what you allowed? Technique has its place, but silence is what makes it sacred. Without silence, practice becomes performance. It becomes another way of trying to win love, approval, peace. But when you invite space, when you pause without needing a result, you open the door for something much greater to move through you. This is the invitation. The next time you finish a practice, whether it's meditation, journaling, breath work, don't rush away. Sit. Stay a moment longer than you normally would. Not to analyze, not to receive guidance, but to be with the residue of stillness. Let the echo settle. Let your nervous system integrate what your mind cannot. You don't need more input. You need more space. In that space, you begin to feel the presence that's always been there. The one that doesn't speak in language, doesn't use logic, doesn't need steps. It just is. That presence is your essence. And your essence is already whole. The silence between the techniques reminds you, you are never lost. You are only covered in effort. And the peace you seek, it's not found in perfect practice. It's found in the sacred pause that follows. Let the pause be enough. Let it speak louder than any mantra. Let it carry you back to yourself. Chapter 6, The Space Where Nothing is Missing. If you let yourself sink deeply into stillness, into that silence between all effort, you'll notice something strange. It feels complete. Not because everything is figured out, not because every emotion is resolved, but because somehow none of that matters in that space. It is a space where nothing is missing. No chasing, no fixing, no proving, just being. And somehow, in being, there is fullness. It's hard to describe with words, because the mind was trained to see life in terms of progress, measurement, and comparison. We were raised to see ourselves as constantly lacking, as needing improvement, as always a few steps away from arriving. But this space, the one that opens when all effort ceases, reveals something different. It shows you that you were never far, that there was never anywhere to get to, that this moment, raw and ordinary as it seems, holds everything you've been asking for. We just forgot how to see it, because we were too busy trying to reach somewhere better. But peace isn't over there. It's beneath the layers of reaching. And when you finally stop, when you stop looking for a result, stop trying to transcend, stop hoping that some future version of you will finally be enough, you drop into now. And now has no missing pieces. The moment you enter full presence, the need to become disappears. You stop asking what's wrong with me. You stop wondering, when will I get there? You stop thinking, why hasn't it happened yet? Instead, something softer arises, something ancient, a quiet knowing. Nothing is broken, nothing is missing. Everything is allowed, even your confusion, even your grief, even your longing. It's all allowed in the space of pure being. And this is not spiritual bypassing. This is not pretending everything is okay when it isn't. It's deeper than that. It's realizing that everything belongs. The sadness belongs. The anger belongs. The joy, the numbness, the clarity, the mess. It all has a place here. Because when you drop the filter of judgment, you step into wholeness. Wholeness isn't about everything being healed. It's about nothing being excluded. This space, this inner home, is always here. It's not built through effort. It's remembered through surrender. And when you rest in it, even briefly, your entire nervous system begins to shift. The grip around your thoughts loosens. The breath deepens without instruction. And the heart softens, not because you forced it, but because it finally feels safe. Safe to stop running. Safe to stop pretending. Safe to just exist. When people talk about presence, this is what they mean. Not perfect awareness, not blissful detachment, but this, the deep okayness that arises when you stop abandoning yourself in pursuit of a future moment. You're not missing anything. You're not late. You're not broken. You're not behind. And that realization, felt, not just understood, is what changes everything. You begin to trust yourself again, not because you've earned it, but because you remember the self you're trying to improve was never lacking. Let that be your ground. Let that be your refuge. Let that be enough. Chapter 7, The Art of Stopping. There's a kind of sacred rebellion in stopping, not the collapse that comes from burnout, not the freeze that comes from fear, but a conscious, deliberate pause, one that says, I'm no longer willing to outrun myself. It's subtle. To the outside world, it may look like doing nothing, but inside, something profound begins to shift. Stopping, in its truest form, is a radical act of trust. It says, I believe there is value in stillness. It's choosing to sit down while everyone else keeps running. Not because you've given up, but because you finally understand that peace is not found in speed. We live in a world addicted to movement, to progress, to doing. Every second is a chance to optimize, to produce, to get ahead. Even healing becomes a race. Even presence becomes a goal. But what happens when you stop? Not momentarily, not just for a quick breath before jumping back in, but really stop. No goal, no agenda, no need to explain or justify it. Just stop. At first, discomfort may arise. The mind might panic. You're wasting time. You may feel guilt. You may feel restlessness. You may hear the inner critic say, you should be doing something. But underneath all that noise, silence is waiting. not emptiness, spaciousness. Stopping is how we learn to receive it. It's how we step out of the trance of urgency and back into the rhythm of life itself. Because life doesn't rush. Life unfolds. Seasons don't panic. The moon doesn't hustle to become full. Trees don't force themselves to bloom. They just stop, wait, listen, respond. And so can you. But to stop truly, you must let go of the part of you that believes your worth is tied to your output. That who you are is measured by what you accomplish. That your presence only matters if it's productive. That's not truth. That's conditioning. And conditioning can be unlearned. You don't stop because you're weak. You stop because you're wise. You stop because your inner compass is whispering, there's another way. Stopping is how you remember. You remember your breath. You remember your body. You remember the sky above your head and the ground beneath your feet. You remember the quiet joy of not needing to change anything. You remember that being alive was never meant to be this exhausting. Let this be your practice. Stop for no reason. Let it be uncomfortable at first. Let stir up everything you've been avoiding. And stay. Because on the other side of that resistance is rest. And not just physical rest, but soul-deep exhale. The kind of rest that doesn't need fixing, doesn't need answers, just presence. In a culture built on acceleration, stopping becomes a spiritual act, a return to your center, a reclaiming of the pace that life was meant to be lived at. Slow, attuned, awake. And from this place, when action arises again, it won't come from force. It will come from alignment. That is the art of stopping. Not to quit life, but to meet it from stillness. Not to abandon your path, but to walk it with awareness. Not to escape the moment, but to melt into it. Let this be enough. Let stillness be the answer you stopped searching for. Let it become your new beginning. Chapter 8, Stories of Surrender. Clara, Ibrahim, and the Fertile Void. Sometimes the deepest truths need a human face. Not a concept, not a quote, but a life lived. So let me tell you 3 stories. Not of people who mastered life, but of people who finally stopped fighting it. Clara, the space between the notes. Clara had been a pianist since she was 5. For years, she believed greatness lived in precision. Every note mattered. Every pause calculated. She practiced endlessly, searching for perfection in the rhythm, the transitions, the expression. But something always felt missing. Despite her discipline, her music never moved people the way she wanted it to. The applause was polite, not felt. And no matter how hard she worked, she could never explain the emptiness in her performances. One day, during a storm-induced blackout, her electronic metronome died. There was no light, no timing, just her, the piano, and the silence. She began to play, not to perform, not to impress, but to feel. The music came out slower, softer, messier, but something unexpected happened. It was alive. There was breath in the space between the notes, emotion in the imperfection. For the first time, she wasn't playing the music, she was the music. And the silence between chords? That's where the soul entered. Clara had spent decades trying to perfect her sound. What finally made it beautiful was surrender. Ibrahim, the shoreline of control. Ibrahim was a businessman, structured, strategic, successful on the outside, but inside he was tired. His days were a grid of obligations. His sleep shallow, his joy conditional. He clung tightly to control, not out of greed, but out of fear. Fear that everything would fall apart without his grip. Fear that he would, too. And then life intervened. His largest contract fell through. His marriage ended. His body began to show signs of stress he could no longer ignore. So one morning, with no plan, he walked to the ocean. He sat on the sand and stared at the waves. He didn't pray. He didn't ask. He just watched. And in that stillness, something in him broke. Or maybe something opened. He realized the ocean didn't need to control the tide. It didn't push. It didn't hold. It moved because it was movement. It rested because it was rest. In that moment, Ibrahim felt it. The universe didn't need his effort. It needed his presence. He let go of the timeline. He let go of the pressure. He let go of the version of himself who had to hold everything together. And life slowly began to flow again. Not because he forced it, but because he finally stepped aside. The fertile void. The third story isn't about a person. It's about a space. In many spiritual traditions, there's a moment called the fertile void. It's the period after you've let go, but before anything new has taken root. It's the space in between identities, between jobs, between loves, between versions of yourself. It's quiet, sometimes agonizingly so. There's nothing to cling to. No next yet. This is the space where many go back, where the fear of emptiness sends us running to what's familiar, even if it hurts. But the fertile void isn't empty. It's preparing something. It's the pause before the inhale, the dark soil where the seed begins to crack, the silence in which clarity is born. Claire met it at the piano. Ibrahim met it at the shore. You might meet it in your bedroom, on a walk, in a tear-filled evening with no answers. And when you do, don't fill it. Don't rush it. Sit with it. Because this is where transformation is not forced, but received. Surrender is not a story with a happy ending. Surrender is the happy ending. It's not the answer that comes after the chaos. It's the peace that says, there's no need to understand. Let that be enough. Let that be the beginning of your next chapter, even if you don't know what that chapter is yet. Chapter 9, healing that arrives when you stop seeking it. There's a certain kind of exhaustion that only comes from spiritual searching. Not the kind that shows on your face, but the kind that lingers deep in your chest. A weariness from always seeking the answer. The shift, the next level, the healing. So much of our inner journey is framed as a pursuit. A mountain to climb, a wound to close, a darkness to overcome. And yet, what if healing isn't something you reach? What if it's something that arrives in the exact moment you stop looking for it? That may sound strange, but pause for a moment and consider. Have you ever received clarity when you stopped thinking? Have you ever felt peace when you finally gave up trying to feel better? This is the paradox that so few speak about. That true healing does not respond to effort. It responds to space. And space is created when you release your grip. Not give up, release. There's a difference. Giving up says, I'll never get there. Releasing says, I'm no longer forcing it. And healing lives in the space between those two. Think of the body. When you cut your skin, you don't fix it. You don't force the cells to regenerate. You protect the area. You rest. You trust that the body knows what to do. The healing happens in the absence of interference. So why do we treat emotional and spiritual pain any differently? Why do we believe we must dig and poke and push our way into wellness? Your soul is not a broken machine. It is a living organism, and it knows how to heal, but only when you stop trying to make it happen on your timeline. There's a quiet power in waiting without rushing, a sacred intelligence in not knowing, a gentle medicine in simply saying, I allow, and it's in that allowing that healing begins, not because you earned it, but because you finally stopped resisting it. This is what most forget. Seeking is, by nature, a form of resistance. It says, this moment is not enough. I must get to a better one. But what if the better moment only comes when this one is welcomed? What if your healing is not late? It's just been waiting for you to be still enough to notice it. This doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you stop grasping. You stop using growth as a disguise for self-rejection. You stop believing that your peace must be pursued. And in doing so, you create the very conditions in which peace can arrive. Sometimes what's needed is not another technique, but a softening, a quiet, heart-level surrender that says, I don't need to push this anymore. I don't need to fix this right now. I can let life hold me, even here. Let your breath be the guide. When you're seeking, the breath is tight. When you surrender, the breath deepens. Healing follows that breath. Not always quickly, not always obviously, but it always comes. In its own way, on its own time. And when it does, it won't feel like an arrival. It'll feel like a homecoming. Not the kind that's loud and celebratory, but the kind that's still. The kind that wraps around you like a warm blanket and whispers, you were never far. You were never far from healing, only distracted by the search. Chapter 10, You Are Not the Thought. You've probably heard it before. You are not your thoughts. It sounds simple, obvious even, but to truly understand it, not just intellectually, but in your bones, is one of the most powerful shifts you'll ever experience. Because until then, the mind runs the show. It speaks and you believe. It doubts and you shrink. It panics and you react. It judges and you feel shame. It's not that the mind is evil. It's just loud. And we spent most of our lives listening to that loudness without question. But the truth is, your thoughts are not facts. They're not orders. They're not identity. They are weather patterns moving through the sky of your awareness. And you are the sky. When you begin to see this, something subtle but profound starts to happen. Space appears. You no longer grab onto every thought that passes. You begin to watch them like clouds. Curious, maybe, but not personal. This shift is not just mental. It's energetic. You begin to feel what it's like to be the witness, not the character. It's like stepping off a spinning carousel and realizing, oh, I don't have to ride this anymore. And in that space, peace becomes possible. Not because your thoughts disappear, but because your attachment to them dissolves. Consider this. The thought says, I'm not good enough. You can believe it and feel shame. Or you can observe it and say, there's that old narrative again. The thought says, nothing's working. You can spiral, or you can breathe and respond. Noted, and still I'm here. You're not the one who thinks. You're the one who notices thinking. And from this noticing, liberation begins. Because if you're not the thought, then your worth is not dependent on what the thought says. Your peace is not held hostage by mental noise. Your identity is not defined by internal commentary. You become free, not because the mind is silent, but because you stop confusing its voice with your truth. Meditation traditions have known this for centuries. Modern neuroscience now confirms it. The act of observing a thought changes the way the brain relates to it. This is not spiritual fluff. It's practical freedom, and it doesn't require a monastery or a silent retreat or a guru. It requires only this: presence. The moment you remember you are not the thought, you are already free from it. Even if it comes back, even if it's loud, freedom is not the absence of noise. It's the power to choose your relationship with it. So next time a thought arises that tries to pull you under, pause. Place a gentle hand on your heart and whisper, I see you. I'm not you. I am still here. Let that be your mantra. I'm still here. I'm not the thought. I'm the space it moves through. And that space is sacred. That space is where peace lives. That space is who you've always been. Chapter 11, The Presence That Needs No Improvement. So much of what we call growth is built on the idea that who we are now isn't quite enough. It's subtle, sometimes disguised in noble language. I want to evolve. I want to become my highest self. But at its root, there's often a quiet message echoing beneath. Who I am right now isn't whole yet, and so we strive. We journal. We read. We affirm. We visualize. We ask for signs. We tweak, adjust, optimize. But what if the presence that's alive in you right now, the one breathing this moment with you, is not something that needs to be refined, but remembered. What if all this work to become more spiritual, more conscious, more present, is actually taking you further from presence? Because presence is not something you earn. It's what you already are, beneath the stories, beneath the effort, beneath the noise. Presence doesn't ask you to improve it. It asks you to stop trying so hard to become better than now. Let that land. You're not a project. You are a presence. And presence has no ambition. It simply is. It watches. It breathes. It accepts. It flows. Is unbothered by how healed or unhealed you think you are. It doesn't care how conscious you seem to others. It doesn't measure your progress. It just shows up, fully, freely, without editing. And this presence, your essence, is untouched by your past, unafraid of your future, unimpressed by your goals, because it already holds everything you think you need to earn. It's not here to be polished. It's here to be trusted. And trust starts with stopping the performance. You don't need to act spiritual to be presence. You don't need the perfect posture, the perfect thoughts, the perfect breath. Presence isn't interested in perfect. It's interested in honesty. Can you meet yourself as you are without reaching? Can you sit with your breath, not to fix it, but to feel it? Can you drop the checklist of what you should be and notice what already is? This is the real path, not a ladder, not a finish line, but a return. A return to the unchanging awareness behind all your attempts to be better. The you before the effort, the you behind the thought, the you that doesn't need a reason to exist. That's presence, and it doesn't need your help. It only needs your attention. The rest will unfold on its own. So sit, breathe, watch, let go, and witness what arises when nothing is forced. You may just discover the most profound realization of all. You never had to become anything. You only had to remember what you've always been. Chapter 12, Guided Meditation. Wholeness in this breath. Let's take a pause now, not to think but to feel, not to seek more ideas, but to rest inside the ones that have already softened you. This is not a performance. There is nothing to achieve here. You're not trying to reach a state. You're simply returning to what's always been underneath. You may close your eyes if you'd like, or soften your gaze. You may sit, lie down, or stand, whatever feels kind to your body. Let's begin. Take a breath. Not a deep breath, not a controlled breath. Just the next breath, however it wants to come. Let arrive, let leave, and notice that you're still here. Feel your body, not with judgment, not with analysis. Just feel the weight of your limbs, the temperature of the air on your skin, the rise and fall of your chest, the quiet pulsing of life happening all on its own. Nothing needs to be changed. Everything is enough. Now, bring your attention to this one breath. Not the next, not the last, just this one. Follow it in, feel a pause, follow out, let go, and in the space after it leaves, notice the stillness. That space is not empty. It's full of presence, full of life, full of you. You don't need to search for peace. You're sitting in it, right now, with no preparation, no effort, no need to earn it. Let yourself sink just 1% deeper into this moment. Not by force, just by allowing. Say silently or out loud if you wish. This moment is enough. This breath is enough. I am enough. And notice what shifts, even slightly, when those words are received instead of resisted. Now, let go of the words. Let go of the trying. And just sit. Just be. Even if thoughts come. Even if sensations arise. Let them come and go like wind across water. You are the lake. Unmoved. Unbothered. Holding everything without needing to do anything. This is presence. This is peace. This is you. Rest here, as long as you'd like, in the simplicity, in the enoughness, in the truth that healing is not ahead of you, It's beneath you, within you now. When you're ready, gently bring your attention back to your body, back to your breath, back to the room, back to this version of you softer than before. Not because you try to change, but because you stop trying at all. Let that be your practice. Not daily effort, but daily remembrance. Chapter 13, The Wealth of Wanting Nothing. There's a kind of wealth that doesn't show up in your bank account. It doesn't glitter. It doesn't measure itself in numbers or status or assets. This kind of wealth arrives in silence, in stillness, in that rare inner space where desire has been replaced by deep contentment. We don't talk about that much because we live in a world built on wanting. From the moment we wake up, we're taught to crave more money, more meaning, more love, more growth. Even our spirituality becomes another place to chase. But what happens when you stop? What happens when you don't just try to be content, but when contentment finds you because you're no longer trying to grasp? The truth is simple and strange. The less you want, the more you feel you already have. And what you already have, you no longer repel. This is the wealth of wanting nothing. It's not that you become passive or indifferent to life. It's that you stop believing your happiness depends on getting what you want. You stop chasing as a substitute for presence. You let things come without demanding that they come. And in that non-demanding, you become magnetic. Because life doesn't respond to need. It responds to being. The energy of grasping, I need this to be okay, closes the heart. It tightens the breath. It creates a subtle vibration of fear. But the energy of contentment, I am whole, even now, opens the channel. It invites. It allows. People who master this don't have perfect lives. They simply don't measure their lives by how much they're missing. They've learned to see fullness in the small things. A deep breath taken without rush. A morning where the mind is quiet. A laugh that arrives unexpectedly. The light on a wall, moving with the sun. This doesn't mean desire is bad. Desire is human. But there's a difference between holding a desire and gripping it. There's a way to want something without needing it to prove your worth. There's a way to allow life to unfold without constantly reaching for more. Try it now. Think of something you've wanted deeply: love, peace, money, purpose. And now, imagine gently loosening your grip on it. Not letting go forever, just relaxing the urgency. Say softly, if it comes, I welcome it. If it doesn't, I remain whole. Let that be your practice. Not needing less, but needing differently. Not from lack, but from knowing. Knowing that what is yours cannot miss you. And what misses you is never truly yours. That knowing is wealth. It's the kind of wealth that allows you to sleep deeply, to breathe fully, to enjoy the present moment instead of bargaining with it. This is the paradox of life. When you no longer chase, things begin to arrive. Not because you earn them, but because your energy finally aligned with receiving. This is the wealth of wanting nothing. It's not the end of ambition. It's the beginning of peace. And from that peace, all things are possible. Chapter 14, The Body Already Knows. Before you knew how to speak, before you learned to worry, before you ever tried to heal or grow or improve, your body was already listening. It was already sensing, already adapting, already carrying wisdom far beyond what words could ever explain. The body doesn't need convincing. It doesn't require mantras to remember stillness. It doesn't need permission to feel what's real, because the body already knows. It knows how to breathe without thought, how to soften when given the chance, how to hold grief until it's ready to move, how to laugh, sigh, tremble, and release without instruction. But somewhere along the way, we forgot how to listen. We prioritized thoughts over sensations. We overrode exhaustion with productivity. We dismissed intuition as irrational. We silenced the body's messages and called it strength. And yet, the body never stops speaking. It tightens when we push too hard. It aches when we carry what isn't ours. It burns when truth is buried. It freezes when the moment becomes too much. These aren't malfunctions. They're messages. The question is, can you listen without needing to fix? Can you stop seeing the body as a problem to solve and begin honoring it as a guide? You don't need another app to track your breath. You need to feel it. You don't need more discipline to force stillness. You need to remember how stillness feels. Let's try it now. Don't close your eyes. Just bring your awareness to one small part of your body. Maybe the hands, or the belly, or the shoulders. Ask silently, what are you holding? Not with judgment. Just ask and wait. You might feel nothing at first. That's okay. You're not doing it wrong. This is not a technique to master. It's a relationship to rebuild. Start simply. What do I feel right now? Not what should I feel. Not what do I want to feel. Just what's here. A twitch, a pulse, a tightness, a warmth, a tiredness. All valid, all welcome. This is how we return. Not through theories, but through touch, through tone, through attention. Your body is not in the way of your healing. It is the healing. It carries the memory of your joy. It carries the memory of your pain. It carries the possibility of release. And when you stop trying to force it to feel better, it begins to open slowly, quietly, beautifully, like a flower in no rush to bloom. Let your body bloom on its own timeline. Let speak to you in sensation, in shivers, in stillness. Let remind you that you are not just a mind trying to figure everything out. You're a living, breathing, sensing, knowing being. You are here, not in theory, but in flesh, and your body already knows how to be. Let it show you. Chapter 15, Letting Go in Love. Love is perhaps the most misunderstood teacher. We're taught to hold it tightly, to claim it, secure it, name it, to keep it close so it doesn't leave. But real love is not a possession. It is not a contract. It is not a guarantee. Real love is a current. And currents don't respond to control. They respond to openness. Many of us learned to love through fear. Fear of abandonment. Fear of loss. Fear that we are not enough as we are. And so we must earn love by being perfect, agreeable, available, impressive. But that isn't love. That's performance. And what we seek in love is not applause. It's freedom, to be seen, to be chosen, to be safe without shape-shifting, to rest without clinging, to offer our hearts without a strategy. But that freedom can't exist when our love is driven by attachment. Because attachment says, you are mine, or I will feel incomplete. You must stay, or I will suffer. You must love me the way I imagine, or this is failure. That kind of love is filled with conditions. It's laced with anxiety. It holds more tension than tenderness. So what happens when we let go? When we release the grip, not to abandon love, but to finally let it breathe, to love someone without needing to own them, to receive love without needing to control how it's given, to offer your heart without asking it to be wrapped in guarantees. That is radical. That is peace. Letting go in love doesn't mean becoming cold or distant or detached. It means allowing yourself and the other to be fully human, imperfect, evolving, changing. It means recognizing that love, when held too tightly, can suffocate. But when given space, it expands. There is strength in softness. There is devotion in letting someone go when their path no longer aligns with yours. There is wisdom in not chasing when someone pulls away. There is clarity in not mistaking attachment for connection. And there is liberation in loving someone even when they don't mirror your need back. When you let go in love, you return to yourself. You stop outsourcing your worth. You stop confusing someone's presence with your safety. You stop believing that love, must come with certainty. Instead, you rest and trust. Trust that love will find you where you're aligned. Trust that what stays, stays freely. Trust that losing love is not losing yourself. Because true love doesn't live in possession. It lives in presence. And presence can't be forced. It must be invited. So let love be an invitation, not a demand. Let it be a choice, not an obligation. Let it be a dance, not a contract. Let it move the way it wants to move, and watch what happens when you stop trying to direct the steps. You may find yourself loved more deeply than ever before, or you may find yourself walking away lighter. Either way, you're free. And in that freedom, love becomes real again. Not because it's permanent, but because it's true. Chapter 16, Living Without a Strategy. Most of us were taught to approach life like a game of chess. Think 5 moves ahead. Plan your path. Protect your heart. Control the outcome. And for a while, this works. Strategy gives a sense of safety. It helps us feel in control of relationships, success, even healing. But eventually, we realize something. Life is not a board, and we are not pieces. We are rivers. We are weather. We are breath. And breath has no strategy. There's a kind of freedom that only emerges when you stop managing your life like a checklist. When you stop calculating every decision based on what it might get you. When you stop trying to optimize your worth. This doesn't mean recklessness. It means presence. Because presence doesn't need a plan to be powerful. Presence doesn't rehearse. It doesn't edit. It doesn't live in the what if. It lives here, now, in the raw, unscripted truth of this moment. And that is its strength. The more you trust that life can unfold without your constant intervention, the more you notice how much energy was going into your mental strategies. How much of your joy was postponed in service of your plan. How often your real self was filtered to fit an imagined outcome. To live without strategy is to stop asking, how will this benefit me? And instead ask, is this true right now? It's trusting that alignment matters more than advantage. It's knowing that the most profound shifts in life rarely came because you forced them. They came because you were finally open. The best connections didn't happen because you strategized them. They happened because you were real. The breakthroughs didn't come when you pushed harder. They came when you paused, surrendered, softened. Living without strategy doesn't mean you never prepare, never care, never take responsibility. It means you no longer act from fear. You no longer approach life as something to conquer. You begin to relate to life as a dance partner, not a problem to solve. You begin to listen more than you speak, feel more than you predict, trust more than you plan. And slowly, something beautiful unfolds. Decisions become simpler. Relationships become cleaner. Moments become fuller. Because you are no longer editing yourself to fit a future that doesn't even exist. You are here, whole, uncalculated, and deeply, deeply available. This is not the absence of intention. It is the presence of truth. It is the sacred return to your natural rhythm. And from that rhythm, the life you are always meant to live begins to reveal itself. Not as a strategy, but as a symphony. Unrehearsed, unforced, unmistakably you. Chapter 17, Manifestation Without Force. We've been told that to manifest what we want, we must focus, visualize, affirm, intend, push energy toward the goal like a beam of light until the universe has no choice but to obey. But that kind of manifestation is often rooted in fear. Fear that if we don't try hard enough, we'll be left behind. Fear that if we don't hold the vision tightly, we'll lose it. Fear that we aren't supported unless we earn what we desire. That's not manifestation. That's anxiety in disguise. True manifestation doesn't come from effort. It comes from alignment. And alignment begins when you stop trying to create your future through force. and begin to live your present with integrity. Here's the quiet truth. You don't attract what you want. You attract what you are. If you want peace, become peaceful. If you want love, become loving. If you want abundance, become spacious inside. This isn't spiritual theory. It's energetic law. When you resonate with the frequency of what you seek, it meets you. Not because you forced it to arrive, but because you stop repelling it with grasping. This is the art of effortless manifestation. Not laziness, not detachment, but embodied openness. It's walking through your day not as someone chasing outcomes, but as someone who already trusts their place in the flow. It's the difference between demanding and inviting. Think of it like a garden. You don't manifest flowers by shouting at the soil. You prepare the earth. You water it. You align your actions with growth. And then you wait. You allow. You trust. The seed already knows what to become. It doesn't need your force. It needs your faith. And the same is true for your life. Yes, speak your desires. Yes, write them down. But after that, let them breathe. Let them go. Because your job is not to control every outcome. Your job is to become the kind of space those outcomes would naturally enter. So ask yourself gently, what am I trying to force right now? What am I afraid won't happen unless I make it happen? Can I still take action without the tension? This is where manifestation becomes sacred. It's no longer about getting. It's about remembering. Remembering that your energy speaks louder than your words. That your openness matters more than your effort. That your trust is a form of magnetism. Let your life be fertile ground. Let your being be the vibration that welcomes what you desire without demanding it on your timeline. And watch as what once felt far away begins to find you. Quietly, naturally, without force. Chapter 18, The Natural State of the Soul. There is a stillness in you that has never been touched by noise. A part of you that was whole before the world taught you otherwise. Before the striving, before the trauma, before the identity. This part is not something you build. It's not something you develop through practice. It's not something you awaken through effort. It simply is, and it has been with you your entire life, watching, quietly, patiently, waiting for you to notice. This is the natural state of the soul. Not your personality, not your thoughts, not your stories, but the spacious presence underneath them all. And that soul state is not anxious. It is not confused. It is not trying to get anywhere. It is peace. It is clarity. It is here. When you sit long enough in stillness, without trying to reach something, you begin to feel it. Not as a concept, not as a belief, but as a felt reality. There is something in you that never left. Something that doesn't flinch when things fall apart. Something that doesn't tighten when uncertainty arrives. Something that doesn't crave approval to know it belongs. And the only reason we suffer so much is because we've spent our lives identifying with everything but that. We believed we were our minds, our roles, our emotions, our wounds, our goals. But your soul is not your resume. Your soul is not your trauma. Your soul is not waiting to be improved. It's waiting to be lived. The natural state of the soul is presence, untouched by circumstance. That doesn't mean you won't feel pain. But the soul doesn't resist pain. It allows it. It holds it. It breathes through it. That doesn't mean you won't face loss. But the soul doesn't collapse in loss. It expands around it. It stays whole through it. And this is your work now. Not to become something better, but to shed everything that isn't this. Let the masks fall. Let the strategies go. Let the tension melt. And what remains is soul. Raw, unfiltered, awake. You don't have to try to find it. You are it. You always were. It was only hidden behind 1,000 thoughts saying, I must do more. I must become more. I must prove I'm worthy. But the soul doesn't speak in striving. It speaks in silence. It speaks in presence. It speaks in the quiet moments when there's nothing left to hold on to, and you realize you never needed to. You were never meant to be anything other than exactly who you are, beneath the noise, beneath the layers, beneath the roles. Let this remembering be your return. Let it be enough to stop, to be, to live from soul. Chapter 19, Trusting the Rhythm of Not Knowing. There's a moment on every path where the map disappears, where the answers grow quiet, where the next step is not clear, where the old life no longer fits, but the new one hasn't arrived. This moment is not a mistake. It's a threshold, and it asks you to do something radical. Trust without knowing. Not because you're supposed to, not because it's easy, but because some of the deepest transformations require you to stand still in the dark and not panic. The world doesn't teach us how to trust the unknown. We're taught to fill every silence, to fix every gap, to rush through every transition. But growth doesn't always come through movement. Sometimes it comes through waiting, not passive waiting, but alive, conscious waiting, the kind of waiting that says, I don't know what's next, and still, I trust this unfolding, because life has its own rhythm, its own pace, its own wisdom, and that rhythm is rarely linear. You may plant seeds and not see growth for months. You may outgrow an old identity without knowing what to replace it with. You may feel pulled to let go of something before you have anything to reach for. This is sacred ground. This is where real surrender begins. And this is where most people turn back. But if you can stay, if you can breathe in the not knowing, you will discover something extraordinary. You don't need clarity to be held. You don't need certainty to belong. You don't need a plan to be whole. Your heart knows how to walk through fog. Your soul knows how to navigate stillness. There's a rhythm to life that you can only hear when you stop trying to conduct the orchestra. And that rhythm isn't always fast. It isn't always loud. It isn't always obvious. But it's there, in the pauses, in the changes, in the silent seasons where nothing seems to be happening, but everything is quietly rearranging. This is where patience becomes sacred, not the gritted teeth kind, but the open-hearted kind, the kind that says, I don't need to force this. I'll know when it's time, because when it's time, you'll feel it, not as a command, but as a knowing, a quiet pulse, a deep yes, a sense of now. Until then, rest. Don't rush what wants to arrive slowly. Don't skip the silence. It's part of the music. Not knowing isn't weakness. It's a different kind of wisdom, the kind that listens, the kind that waits, the kind that lets the truth arrive when it's ready. And when it does, you'll see that everything made sense, not because you controlled it, but because you trusted it. Chapter 20, Surrender is the highest form of power. We live in a world that glorifies control. Control your outcomes. Control your image. Control your future. Control your emotions. Power, we're told, is the ability to bend life to our will. But real power, the kind that moves mountains quietly, doesn't come from control. It comes from surrender. Not passive surrender. Not defeat. Not the collapse that comes when you're too tired to keep fighting. But sacred surrender. The kind that says, I trust the rhythm of life more than the plan in my head. I choose to soften, even when I could brace. I choose to open, even when I could close. This is not weakness. This is strength in its most authentic form. Because surrender requires presence. It requires courage. It requires faith that you are held, even when you can't see the hands holding you. Anyone can push. Anyone can fight. Anyone can perform certainty. But to bow, to breathe into the unknown, to stop grasping for what isn't arriving, to stop resisting what already is, that takes something deeper. It takes a trust so rooted in your being that even in chaos, you remain clear. Even in heartbreak, you remain soft. Even in darkness, you remain light. That's the power of surrender. It doesn't change the world around you. It changes the way you move through it. From tension to trust, from resistance to flow, from striving to simply being. And in that shift, life begins to respond differently. Not because you forced it, but because you stopped getting in the way. Surrender isn't giving up on what you want. It's letting go of how you think it has to happen. It's trusting that life's intelligence is greater than your timeline. That peace arrives not when you reach your destination, but when you stop needing to escape the moment you're in. This is the highest form of power. To remain rooted when everything feels uncertain. To remain open when it would be easier to shut down. To remain whole when the world tells you you're not enough. So here you are now, at the end of this journey. Not fixed, not perfect, but remembered. Remember to yourself. Back in the truth that was never gone. Back in the breath. Back in the silence. Back in the enoughness that doesn't need to be earned. You don't need to keep searching. You don't need to keep striving. You're not behind. You are not broken. You are not incomplete. You are here. You are whole. And everything you've been trying to become, you already are.